Can you hear it, Ian?
Yeah, hello.
How you doing? You alright?
Yeah, not too bad. Yourself?
Yeah, doing good. Yeah.
So what are we discussing today?
Today, Ian, we're going to be discussing mainly Agenda 21.
Agenda 21. Right, let's pull that up then.
Amongst other things. So.
Okay, yeah, I'll have a quick read.
Have you not come across it before?
Is this the non-binding voluntary implementation plan of the United Nations with regard to sustainable development?
That's
That's the nice way of putting it.
that's the
That's the mainstream's version of it.
that's the sheep language, right?
Oh yeah, I expect so. It is from the Wikipedia after all.
Well, I'll give you a quick rundown of it. Good afternoon, Ian, by the way. It's,
Good afternoon, hello.
it's basically an end to national sovereignty, state planning and management of all land resources, ecosystems, deserts, forests, mountains, oceans, freshwater, agricultural, rural development, biotechnology, and ensuring equity (brackets equals slavery). The state to define the role of business and financial resources. Abolition of private property, it's not sustainable. Restructuring the family unit. Children raised by the state. People told what their job will be. Major restrictions on movement. Creation of human settlement zones. Mass resettlement as people are forced to vacate land where they currently live. Dumbing down of education, achieved in brackets, mass depopulation in pursuit of all the above. There you go.
Alright, okay, so it's a control thing.
Yeah, I probably rushed through that a little bit quick, but
No, that's alright. Yeah, I get the gist of what we're doing, yeah, it's
Well,
yeah.
I'm sure you'll find this talk very interesting, Ian, if you briefly know just parts of Agenda 21. I'm sure
Yeah.
in the next hour or two you're going to know quite a lot more.
Cool, I can be the ignorant one then that goes, what?
Yeah.
No, you can put valid points because that's what it's all about. I mean,
Yeah.
I've read a little bit about it. I've not been really mainstream, bloody word. I've not really been, I've not read the whole document. I mean, it's massive. You could download the whole thing from the United Nations site, I think, or somewhere. There's a PDF kicking around anyway, and it's as long as the Bible, It's
Yeah, of course, because they don't want people to read it, because if they read it, then they would go, hang on a second.
Yeah, exactly. But if just on things that are happening at the moment, yeah, the fracking, the push to frack England to death is basically under the Agenda 21. Because that way, I mean, how do you get people off the rural land? I mean, bear in mind, they're selling licenses that cover 67% of the landmass of England. So, I mean, you can imagine what the hell it's going to look like when they start this game, if they can get the go ahead and get over the social contract side of things. But if they get ahead on that, then yeah, if you've got property and you've got a fracking site just down the road or in your back garden, it's not going to be worth jack shit anyway. So
I can't see it.
But that's looking looking beyond the point where people just sit there as obedient slaves and just go, "Oh, you can't do anything about it, can you?" You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's just the way it is, as they tend to go.
Well, I've been to one. I went to a couple of days down the fracking camp. The protectors were not far from me in Balcombe in Sussex. The other summer before last, and to be honest, if they say that they can get a social contract, i.e., where people don't protest and stand there and block lorries, well,
Yeah.
I mean, they've got to do it under darkness and very fast, and I can't see them with the logistics that are involved with it. It's incredible. The amount of lorry traffic. I mean, this thing, if it starts, I mean, you won't worry about potholes on roads. You just won't have any roads left.
Yeah.
It's totally, absolutely. I can't help but think at the back of my mind it's one big bloody bluff, because, like I say, the logistics and the amount of fresh water. Let's get this right. It's not salt water. It's got to be fresh. It's got to be fresh water. Yeah. The amount per frac, which I think just a medium-sized frac, you're looking at 2 or 3 million gallons of water per frac. I mean,
well, that's been helpful given that the water situation in this country and our water management systems are absolutely shot. You know, every year we're getting told, you know, there's a drought here and there's flooding there, because our water management systems just aren't up to coping with just standard demand. So then they're going to add this on top of it, and it's just going to, you know, exacerbate the problem.
Well, I just don't see what the only other thing that they're going to do is get it from the underground aquifer some way. But if they do that, then you might as well kiss goodbye the water supply, the water table. I just can't see how they're going to pull it off. Although that's not to be, you know, you've got to be warned that they ain't going to try. You know what I mean? So people have got to be there.
Regardless of whether it pollutes our water supply, they're not interested in that. If it kills a load of people off and we all, you know, it doesn't really matter to them as long as they're making their money.
I don't know what's wrong with them though, Ian. I don't really know what's wrong with them, because they've got their cake and eat it. They've got...
Well,
don't have to worry
what we should
about
do,
money.
I've got an idea. We should get these people that they do care about, the ones that they really need. I mean, they need us all, but, you know, these ones that are well up, we should get them and send them to these fracking protests and get them to protest.
Yeah, I mean,
you know, we'll rummage around and try and pick a few out. You know, ones that we think. I don't know. For an example, Richard Branson. You know, could get him and get him down there, get him protesting about it.
Get a little bit more higher public profile.
Yeah.
Rather than.
Because like you said, you know, they won't flatter an eyelid to you know, see us go. But if it's somebody that they might think twice, you know, where it affects them a little bit more.
They seem to operate on this kind of philosophy that if it doesn't affect them negatively, then it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it affects everyone else negatively, but as long as if it's fine for them, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And it's how people can operate in that kind of blinkered way. Just I don't understand how they can show such lack of empathy with other people.
Well, they said there's a method to every madness, and on that note, Ian, I'm going to introduce you to Albert, because we need to bring him on. He's got 2 hours with us, so let's see if we can bring him on.
Hello there.
Alright, Albert.
How are you?
Good afternoon. I'm doing very well.
Yeah, good.
How are you? How's your knee?
Well, my knee is actually, it's still swollen, as is all the way down my leg. My foot is swollen. But in fact, I'm walking on it quite well at the moment, and I can get up and down stairs putting weight on it, so it's coming along nicely, I think.
Have you got your sensation there, or have you got a lot of cramp, pins and needles and that?
Well, it feels a bit numb, really, but it's coming. It's coming. I mean, I saw the surgeon last week, and he was very pleased with it, and he said in 6 weeks' time it will be absolutely back to normal. You won't know the difference.
Right.
So,
Good. Well, if you're walking on it, if you're walking on it and you're putting weight on it, that's a good sign to me.
Absolutely. And I've been walking around without a stick of any kind. So.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah. So, and I say I'm walking up and down stairs quite easily now, and putting weight on as I go up the stairs. You know, so yeah. So it's working quite well.
Brilliant stuff. Albert, I want to introduce you to Ian Taylor. I don't think you've spoke before. You might have, but I don't think.
No, I don't think so. No.
Hi, how's it going?
I'm fine, thank you. And you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, Ian does. He's got a Facebook page, Dynamic Unity, and I think you're working. Are you still working with Left Unity, Ian?
Yeah, I'm still working with them. I went to their national council meeting on Saturday, which was a bit of an eye-opener. They've got some problems, but we'll see what we can do. We'll see if we can get them to unify a little bit more and become a unified front rather than being a little bit argumentative and infighting. That seems to be their main problem at the moment.
If you can be argumentative, but if it's in healthy sort of arguments, then that's what you need. But if you're not getting anywhere with any of it, then
yeah, it doesn't seem to be much progression. There's not much constructive argument going on. It's just more kind of us versus them, us versus you, feminists versus everybody else, and it's all a bit of a mishmash.
Which group is that?
It's Left Unity.
Left Unity. Never heard of them.
They're only quite small. They're going for a political party. They've got about 2,000 members. They're not a huge political party, but they've got some good ideas, and they at least they're trying to work together. But
yeah.
It's still early days yet for them, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
We all need to work together. They might be the ones to show us the way.
We'll see.
Yeah, so other than that, Albert, we're doing a talk on Agenda 21. Are you familiar with that?
Not really, no. I tend to stick to the constitutional issues and the law, really.
I know. Well, we wanted your opinions from that angle.
Okay.
If that's all right with yourself.
No, that's fine. Yeah. No, that's fine.
Cool.
I find it interesting that as somebody that follows like conspiracy theories and what's going on, that this has completely missed my attention, because it's absolutely major stuff that they're planning.
Yeah, it is. It's hello, Albert, by the way. Yeah. Well,
hello there.
If you look at what's going on with the EU and the areas they're going to split up, like down here where I am, I can't remember the name of it, but it's going to be in with northern France, the Channel area, the southern area. I don't think it's up as far as where you are, Albert, but they've already got money's already been sponsored locally around down the road from me and that by EU finances to change it into this. Is it the Monches or something region? I can't remember what it is, but it's all.
I don't deal with any of that, because I mean, basically, as far as I'm concerned, the whole bloody issue is treasonable.
Absolutely.
And the object of the exercise is to hang our politicians and get the hell out of it.
You're not going to get.
That's the quickest bus.
You're not going to get it done through Farage then.
Through Farage.
Yeah.
I'm not actually a lover of Farage. I mean, Farage is a good public speaker and he's a good front man for UKIP. However, Farage has thrown out anybody out of UKIP that's got any halfway decent ideas. He runs it as his own personal fiefdom. If you upset Farage, you're gone. There's nothing democratic about Farage. I also believe that he is only in it for what Farage can get out of it. If he gets in as a Westminster MP, I think he will remain on as an MEP, which I think they can do, and I think he will draw his Westminster salary and all his expenses, and I think he will draw his MEP salary and all expenses, and I think he'll be living in clover. Because if he gets 60-odd thousand from us, and I think they get about 110,000, that's not bad going before expenses, is it?
No, it isn't. All right, then.
No. And once he retires from Europe, he will get a European pension, which is very, very good. I think it's his annual salary as his pension, and that's for life. But you lose your pension if you say anything anti-European. So once he's retired from Europe as an MEP, he will draw the pension, and then you won't hear him say a bloody word about Europe, because if he does, it's going to cost him his 110 grand, whatever it is they're paying him when he retires, for the rest of his life. So he's not going to say anything about Europe. Farage is in it for Farage. That's my honest opinion.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't tend to get where Iain's obviously in this left unity is trying to build some sort of like political movement. I'm a bit of a, I probably killed a conversation. I'm a bit of a political atheist, to be honest, because because of what's gone on and what's going on through the corrupt, as Albert would call them, probably imposter politicians in the House of Parliament. I just feel that, you know, we can. I don't think things like Agenda 21 and that sort of thing should be ignored.
No.
And thinking that we can, from a sweep of a pen, get rid of the EU.
Well, if you look at our law, if we actually enforce our law, we can change this overnight. Do you know what a denizen is?
Oh yes, I remember you saying the other day about this. Yes.
Yeah. Well, if we enforce our law on denizens, we empty both houses of Parliament and every town hall in the country. And I've written to the Commissioner of Police asking him to arrest every denizen in both houses of Parliament, and with a view to finding out who put them there, so that they can be charged with treason. And basically, what the denizen thing was designed to do was to make sure that we had no foreign influence in our government at all. So if we can do that, that's fine. I've also found something else out, because the House of Commons claim they rule by sovereignty. They have sovereignty. But on the 9th of March, 1784, King George III wrote to William Pitt, I can't think of his first name, I think it's William Pitt, who was a government minister, about a vote that they'd taken in the House, because the King forced a vote in the House as to who held sovereignty, him as the anointed king, or the House of Commons as the elected House. And after a speech by Pitt, in which he said it was better to have one dictator than 350 dictators, which was the number of MPs in the Commons at the time. And after they had the vote, the King won the vote. So it was decided by House of Commons vote, and they couldn't really decide any other way without committing treason anyway. But it was decided by parliamentary vote in the House of Commons that the King is entirely sovereign. Now they've never had another vote, and so Queen Elizabeth, by parliamentary vote and the common law of England, is our fully sovereign Queen. The only problem is she doesn't know it, and the Parliament are covering it up. And they were a bit crafty about that, because in 1818 the House of Commons decided they needed a library, because they had all these parliamentary rolls about all these bills and discussions they had going back as in fact hundreds of years, and they were all just chucked in a room on the floor. So they hired, in 1818, they hired a librarian and told him to catalogue it all and make it all sensible. So you could go to a Cardex, look what you wanted, then go to a shelf and pick it off the shelf like you do in a library today. And that was done. But no, that took him 16 years. But no sooner had he completed the work than the House of Commons library burnt down with all of the old parliamentary rolls. So there is no parliamentary record of the vote by King George over King George's sovereignty. However, I have a book of King George III's letters, one of which to Pitt is discussing the fact and saying that he was very pleased with the outcome of the vote in the House, and that William Pitt, with his speech to the Commons, had actually saved the Constitution, which means that the King is supreme. So you know, so we get stuff from different places, but we're always getting good stuff, which always shoots Parliament in the foot, really.
Mm.
I've seen that news today, well, yesterday I think it might be the day before, And Albert, they were just bickering about using Scotland, saying if we were to talk about Scotland's, you know, stuff, they won't like it. So they were just using different examples, but they weren't actually sticking to the actual point. You know, the principle of it all.
Actually, you said about that sovereignty, Albert, and the supposed usurping of it by the Parliament back in said that day. But I mean, you know, the Queen is sovereign because she wouldn't be able to take her coronation oath.
No, absolutely.
So why? How can she not be aware that she's not head sovereign?
Well, because she was brought up, she was educated in constitutional law from the age of 12 to 22 by a man called Sir Henry Martin. Sir Henry Martin was a Fabian, and the Fabians, we all know, want to destroy everything that's good in this country. So we can guarantee that Henry Martin did not tell her the truth about what her real authority is. For example, she has a last-ditch authority given to her by the common law, that she can actually suspend Parliament. If the country is in danger, which it is at the moment, she could actually suspend Parliament and take over the running of the country herself, using her Privy Council and anybody else that she feels might be of use. So, you know, so she could do that. She just simply doesn't know she can do that. Because she's never been educated in it.
Do you think then, okay, it's getting a bit late for the old girl, bless her, in that respect. You know, there's all theories about Charles maybe taking the crown for a while, if he does, maybe abdicating or whatever, and William comes straight in. Now, do you think that William will know what it means to be head sovereign?
No, I don't, and I think he won't, because he's never going to be told the truth about it. Because he's in line for the throne, so they're not going to tell him about all of the inherent authority that he has. I don't like to use the word power. All of the inherent authority that the king is given by the Constitution and the common law. So I don't think they're going to tell him that. I think they're going to tell him that this is a constitutional democracy and that Parliament rule the place and he just rubber stamps everything. But in fact, they don't even rubber stamp it. Because I have a report from the House of Commons Library which says that the royal assent has not been personally given by the sovereign since Queen Victoria in 1854. So the Queen who gets blamed for giving the assent to all of these treaties and everything else, she hasn't even been asked about them. The Parliament will tell you that they now run on the automatic assent. So it doesn't matter what the Queen says or thinks or does anything else about it. They simply will just rubber stamp it anyway.
Well, of course, if they've usurped sovereignty, they don't need the Queen, do they?
Well, no. If they are sovereign, they are not. They are stealing sovereignty. And this is our problem.
The Queen has issued vetoes over parliamentary law that have been passed, because she's the final rubber stamp, isn't she? But,
well, what she's done is she's issued vetoes on things that were being done concerning her personally and Prince Charles personally. But she hasn't done that over anything else. But I had a friend, John Gourier, who had been an army officer, and who had served a lot of time with the royal family and considered them to be personal friends. And he said that privately, the Queen is absolutely hopping mad about what is going on with the country, but doesn't know what she can do about it. And he said, if you mention the European Union in front of Princess Anne, the air is bluer than it ever was in any barrack room that you've ever been in. You know, so... I mean, I think we need a strong sovereign. And I personally think that if we're going to have a sovereign, and we should really opt for Anne, because Anne doesn't suffer fools gladly. She has physical and moral courage. She is very switched on. She knows what she wants. She knows how to go and get it. And I think that she would make an excellent queen. And frankly, I'd rather like to see Cameron telling Anne what she has or hasn't got to do, because I think she'd just take her riding crop and beat the crap out of him with it.
Which would be something for the news, certainly.
Yeah. Well, Cameron, of course, would never ever let it out, would he?
No.
Well, is that with that, Albert?
Theresa May, Mike.
You've got this massive discontent with the royal family, which is being propagated by the powers that be and national TV like BBC.
What it's being put out by is by an awful lot of people who every time something happens immediately say that it doesn't. I mean, it's like you take this shooting that's out in Sydney on Australia in this cafe. The guy, he was suspected of murdering his wife. He's wanted to be put on trial for 40 serious sexual assaults and all the rest of it. He's got in there, he's shouting and screaming about bloody ISIS and all the rest of it, and immediately after he gets shot dead, everybody on this side of the water, who knows absolutely bugger all about what happened in Australia, is screaming left, right and centre that this was a false flag operation. Now, we seem to have an awful lot of people talking false flag operations.
I've got another opinion on it, Albert, which is, you know, when they actually finally went in to deal with it, they chucked so many, you know, like, stun grenades.
They made a right pig's ear of it.
And they went in for 36 seconds, and everyone pretty much emptied the magazine, right? Now, how can they be sure that the two people that died did not get taken out in their fire and not the single guy's fire? How can
they will find that out. Well, we know that the guy, in fact, attempted to remove. He had a go at the guy to take the guy's gun off of him, and it went off. That's what killed him.
He was the owner of the cafe.
We can't say that the woman wasn't killed by the police.
Right.
There's every possibility that she was. They will find that out when they act, because what happens in these cases is that they do a post-mortem to find out how they died and why they died. Well, we know she died because she was shot. But they will do a post-mortem for that. They will recover the bullet, and then they will do a comparison with that bullet with every gun that every police officer has. So that, you know, if it's a rifle bullet, all of their rifles, all their assault rifles they use, will be taken in, and they will be test fired to find out exactly whose gun fired that particular bullet. But it's going to be put down anyway as a tragic accident.
Yeah.
I mean, you could guarantee that it's a tragic accident.
Well, I read a report saying that they were refusing to class it a terrorist act.
Who was refusing? The state, Tony Abbott.
I believe so. It might not have been directly.
Well, Tony Abbott is saying, "Oh, this is nothing to do with Islam." But then, if you look at our politicians have all got their bloody heads in the sand, haven't they?
Yeah.
You know, we see ISIS going around the Middle East, decapitating people left, right, and bloody centre. We've got people over here like Chowdhury advocating the same thing for over here with Sharia law and all the rest of it. And our politicians are saying, oh, well, you know, there are good Muslims, there are bad Muslims. I don't subscribe to that idea. If you're a Muslim, you believe in the Quran as it's written, letter by letter, just as you do if you're a good Christian, you believe in the Bible and the story that tells you. The Bible tells us about love. The Quran is full up with things about, you know, what you do with your female slaves, and, you know, and all the rest of it. And you've got to go out and kill people and take their heads off, because that's what Muhammad did, and Muhammad is the example they use. So you know, as far as I'm concerned, if you're a Muslim, then you should really, if you're a good Muslim and you don't believe in all that crap, then you should really do something to prevent it, and it's not being done to prevent it. Not only is it not being done.
There is many Muslims out there who are standing up against it, Albert. I don't know if you are.
Well, I saw a thing yesterday on the internet where Chowdhury, in fact, approached a group of elderly Muslims, and basically they chucked him out and told him to sod off, you know, and all the rest of it. But that's Chowdhury with Muslims. Well, why aren't any of these Muslims? See, these people go into these mosques and they radicalise the young people in the mosques. If there are good Muslims in the mosque, why in the first place do they allow them in? Why don't, as soon as they walk through the door, why don't they just pick them up and sling them out? so that they don't get their young radicalised. Why, in fact, don't they just pick them up by the ear rolls and drag them round to the nearest police station and say, look, this guy is inciting murder, because that's what it is. And in fact, I've just written a nice letter to the Commissioner of Police about the whole subject of Muslims marching around London with banners and screaming for death for the infidel, who just happens to be a crime because it's an offence under the Offences Against a Person Act of 1861. So why aren't the police arresting the people doing the marching and all this advocating murder, instead of just walking them down the road? And if one of our people has a go about it and starts shouting at it, they get arrested instead. Why is that happening?
It's very.
I thought we had free speech. We have the right to stand up and say we're not happy about something.
I think maybe there may be, there are Islamists out there that are, buggered off with this as ordinary British people.
Oh, absolutely. I think there's a lot of misinformation out there.
Yeah, and I think they come up against a brick wall, very much like your good self has, Albert. You can report a crime of treason, Tony Blair, or anybody like that, okay? Weapons of mass destruction, war criminal crimes, etc., 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 or even, denizens, and like you're saying, you go and try and report a crime at a local police station, let alone a head office somewhere, they won't even give you a crime number.
Forget, they don't even touch rapes these days.
I've just posted my letter to the Commissioner of Police on the side.
Okay.
You should have a read of it. I've not pulled any punches, believe me. I don't mess about with a man. I think the man is a moron of the first ilk, and I simply don't mess about with him.
How are you going to get these people to actually take notice, or get them to at least report a crime? I mean, isn't it their duty?
Well, it is absolutely their duty. And the rule is quite simple. If you have a reasonable report of a crime, if it's a reasonable report, then the police are required to record it as a crime, give you a crime book number, and then investigate it. That's what they are there for do. Obviously, it has to be a reasonable crime. If you go to the police station and say, officer, a spaceship pulled up over my garden last night, and a little man came down a green beam of green light and stole all my garden gnomes, well, that's not a reasonable allegation of crime, is it? So, they wouldn't be expected to record that, although they would be expected to see that the man got the medical treatment that he needed. But the fact of the matter is, they are required by the law of this country to record all reasonable crime. However, Tony Blair put through the 2002 Police Reform Act. And the Police Reform Act has something which wasn't in it when I was policing, which was that you book a crime-related, gets booked as a crime-related incident. Now that's not recorded as a crime, it's therefore not counted as a crime. You know you've been burgled and you've had all your family silver stolen. You know that while you were being burgled, your old mum who was in a house on her own has been beaten shitless. You know that, but the police record it not as a crime, an aggravated burglary, which is what it actually is. They record it as a crime-related incident. It doesn't get counted on the statistics. So at the end of the year, the police turn around and they say to the Home Office, well, we've only had 20 burglaries in our area, whereas in point of fact, the people who live there have had 150 burglaries between them. Yeah. So the whole thing is designed to skew the statistics, to make the government and to make the police look good and efficient, and frankly, they are not.
Effectively, it's corrupted the system.
It absolutely corrupted the system. When I was policing, they brought in a point system. If you got if every time you did something policing, you were given a point. If you gave out a non-endorsable fixed penalty ticket, or parking ticket, then you got 1 point. If you gave out an endorsable penalty ticket, fixed penalty ticket, you got 3 points. If you caught a rapist after a 6-week inquiry, you got 3 points. Now, the number of points you get over the year determines whether you get a good report or a bad report. And whether you get good reports or bad reports determines your chances of getting promoted, and therefore your chances of earning more money. So if you want to be promoted and earn more money, what do? Do you go out and you look for burglars, or do you look for rapists, or do you actually go and stand the wrong side of a set of traffic lights and give out 18 fixed penalty tickets during the course of the day for people who jump the lights? You know, it has corrupted the entire thing. It has skewed up. When they asked me to do it, I told them to bugger off. I said, I'm not going to do that. You know, it's not part of my, not something I'm into. I'm not doing that. I will carry on looking for the bad guy. Right? If I see a car,
everybody had as much integrity as that.
Well, they should. They should, though, shouldn't they? It's like the Metropolitan Police have just issued this, or it's just been leaked, this report from the Metropolitan Police, that says that Asian officers, virtually 100% of Asian officers, are corrupt. Now, if they know they're corrupt, why are they still employing them? But instead of which, the Metropolitan Police are saying, well, we have to do extra training for our corrupt officers. Why? If they are Asian officers and they are corrupt, you get rid of them. Now, I have to tell you that when I was policing, I worked with some officers from various ethnic minorities, and I've not worked with a good one. I really haven't. They're more trouble than they're worth. And I worked with one, I used to constantly get posted with this Sri Lankan guy, and I said to the sergeant one day, I said, Sergeant, why the hell do you keep posting me with him? And he said, oh, but nobody else will work with him, and we think you're the only one who can contain him. But he used to drive me crackers, and he hated West Indians with a vengeance, and Africans with a vengeance. If he stopped a car driven by a West Indian or an African, he would go out of his way to wind them up to get them to hit him so they could be arrested for assaulting an officer. And I told him one day, I said, if one of these boys gives you a belt in the mouth, don't expect me to arrest them, because I'm going to tell the sergeant if they hadn't done it, I was going to. You know, because it's just chronic. All this idea that you've got to throw the police force out to ethnic minorities. The first thing that happened was they had to reduce the height requirements, because a lot of Asians wanted to join, and of course the requirement was you had to be 5'8" if you were a man, and 5'6" if you were a woman to join the police force. Well, not many Asians qualify for that. They're all about 5'4" or 5'2" or whatever. So they were then complaining that they were discriminated against because they couldn't join the police force because they weren't big enough. Now they've done away with the height restriction and all the rest of it. I worked with a policewoman in Aylesbury who was virtually she was less than 5 feet, she was 4'11" tall. What the heaven's name use is she going to be in sorting out a pub fight?
Not a lot. I mean, what's your opinion on getting cameras on the police force to try to monitor?
I have never ever objected to people seeing what I'm doing, and if they want to sit there with a video camera and they want to film me while I'm doing it, I don't care. I know that I'm doing my job properly the way it should be done. I know that. I know that if I make an arrest, it's a good arrest, because I was very slow to make arrests, but I would always go the extra mile to make sure I had more than sufficient evidence to justify the arrest. So I didn't care one way or another whether people stopped and watched. And I worked in Harlesden in London for a while, which is 80% ethnic minorities. And I stopped a car in Harlesden High Street, and driven by a West Indian guy, and he'd been drinking. He had a defective light, which I wasn't going to do any more than just tell him to get me fixed. But he had been drinking, so I got him out of the car so I could breathalyse him. And within less than a minute, I had about 60 other West Indians there, came over, is he hassling you, man, is he hassling you? And I said, look, if you want to stand here and watch what I'm doing, do it. You line yourselves up against that wall over there. If you attempt to stop me doing my job, I will arrest you for obstructing me, whether that's one of you or all of you. And they all stood against the wall. And before I left, I said to them, you have to understand, boys and girls, that I don't live here. If this guy's going to run over anybody's kids, it is not my kids, because they're not around here. He's going to run over your kids. It's going to be your wife that he kills. Yeah, not mine. So when you actually see a policeman actually doing something to stop a car driver and then giving him a breath test, don't come along and get all funny peculiar over it and think that we're picking on him. We're not. What we're doing is we're trying to save the lives of your wives and your children.
Yeah.
You know?
Albert, on that note, I want to introduce you to somebody who you might not particularly be fond of spending time with.
Who's that?
It's a guy called David Robinson.
I don't think I've heard of it.
Right, well, I'll invite him on. He's come across bits and bobs of what you've done, do you know, with your work and that, and parts of it he doesn't agree with, so he might have a few, but that's what we're all about, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But he's decided to at least return and join us.
Okay.
So let me just try and invite him back.
He wants to tell me what he doesn't agree with. We'll see if we can convince him otherwise.
Hello?
Hello?
Hello.
Oh, hi, I've got Dave here. Hang on a sec.
Alright.
Dave? Is that alone?
The thing is though, Albert, you've got good policing, but you've also got a lot of bad policing.
I'm sure that's absolutely correct.
I think that's the case. I mean, the police force nowadays, they don't seem to have an awful lot of respect for the integrity that you seem to hold in very high regards, and how much it has corrupted since you were working in the force. I don't know how long that was. It certainly seems to be a different ball game nowadays. So
I'm absolutely sure that is correct. And one of the things that I find is that when I was policing, I and everybody that I worked with, we would walk down the road and we would smile at people and we'd say, "Oh, good afternoon, madam, how are you?" And, you know, lovely day, or, you know, the sooner I get out of this weather and get back to a cup of tea, it'd be lovely, you know. And then you could have a laugh and a joke with people. But nowadays, every police officer you see, they look at you as though you have just committed a major crime.
Yeah.
You know, and the reason for that is quite simple. And it's down to government. It's exclusively down to government. Government have said to the police, "Look, we're so concerned for your safety because we think you're going to be attacked by the general public." There's not a snowball's chance in hell of that happening, by the way. But we think you're in a real danger of being attacked by the general public. So we're going to give you body armour. And we're going to give you a new pair of handcuffs that's really efficient. You can break somebody's wrist with. And a big stick so you can beat them senseless with. And then we're going to give you a CS spray. And eventually we're going to give you a gun, right? Because we're so concerned for your safety when you're walking down the road with the general public. So they come out of the Hendon College or whatever police force it is, having been told this, and they come out there and they believe that when they walk down their local high street, everybody they meet is going to try and kill them. And it just isn't true. And because they're walking around the streets and because they're dressed up, you know, like RoboCop with all the gear and all the rest of it, and the uniform has gone from a nice white shirt, hasn't it, to black overall, and instead of a nice shiny tunic with nice silver buttons on it, they've got all this body armour and all the rest of it. And the general public look at that and they think, that's not an English policeman. That's an army of occupation. So the police are brought up nowadays. They're trained to believe they're at real risk from the public, which is total nonsense. And the public see what they are looking at when they see a policeman, and they immediately recoil away from it because it's not what we're used to in this country. And that is what's happening. Government are deliberately alienating the police force from the public.
Yeah,
they're deliberately doing it. And I would say that there's a lot of good policemen out there, and I would say that if you're a member of the public and you're walking down the road and you see a policeman coming towards you, say, "Good morning, officer. Have you having a nice day? Nice and quiet around here, isn't it? You know, think you're doing a great job." He's then going to smile at you, and he's going to get this idea that, well, maybe the public don't really want to kill him.
Albert.
Yeah, I mean, it's the us versus them mentality that the police are beginning to be instilled with. And I think what you were talking about earlier about the points and depending on how you're going to get promoted in the police force, it means that every single time a police officer interacts with somebody, they're thinking, what can I get this person on so that I can get some good stats, so I can get paid?
I think there is a very real danger of that. I think there is a very, very real danger of that. And if you look at some of the stupid arrests that are made, you know, I mean, I would be completely appalled. And I know if I took some of these arrests into my sergeant, I mean, I know that my sergeant would have kicked me all around the police station yard, you know, because you have to have a good and valid reason. But now, because you've got this change in the mentality within the police force, people are arresting people for the most ridiculous things, and when they do it, what's happening is they get them in the police station, and then the lies start coming out, you know, and they start doctoring the books and all the rest of it. I'm not saying this is all police officers, I'm saying there are some who are doing it. And you see that it's seriously bad policing, and it shouldn't be allowed. And what's happening now...
Self-reinforcing in the system. If you have the kind of mentality where the only people that get promoted are those that are going to, doctor the books and things like that to try to up their stats, they're the ones that are going to get into the positions of sergeant or whatever.
Yeah, and
are reinforcing it for the new people that come into the force, and it's just a self-reinforcing cycle. Do you see what I mean?
Well, it is. And the other thing that happened was they brought in advanced promotion if you've got a university degree. Before, it didn't matter. You did your 2 years basic training, which was 6 months at the police training college, and then 18 months on the job training, right? And if you passed all that, and then you became confirmed as a constable, you then had to be a constable for, you know, some people stay constables all their lives, some people stay a constable for 5 or 6 years, and they take the sergeant's exam and they become a sergeant. They then stay a sergeant for another 5 or 6 years, they take the inspector's exam, they become an inspector. After inspector, you don't take exams, it's on seniority and it's on how good you are, right, to get up the ladder. But now what happens is, you join the police force, you've got a university degree in origami, which is absolutely no use to anybody whatsoever, and you do your 2 years, you then become an inspector. So you're now an inspector, but you have absolutely no idea about what policing is all about, because you've only been doing it for 2 years, and it takes quite a few years to actually find out what day of the week it is. Because it is one of those jobs where you get constantly, every time you go out, you hear something different, and you need to be able to think on your feet and all the rest of it. But these people get promoted after 2 years. They're then in a position to tell the constable who's been doing the job for 15 years what he has to do. Yeah? And then they get that, after they've done 4 years as the inspector, they get sent off to Bramshill, the police training college, for accelerated promotion. They come out of Bramshill as a chief inspector. They still know nothing about policing. Before you know where you are, they're a chief superintendent. They still know nothing about policing, from the real policing, what policing is all about. And then before you know where you are, the man is a chief constable somewhere. He's never done a proper day's police work in his life. He has no idea what the policeman or he has to put up with, or anything else, or what the job entails, and he's just there pushing paper instead of folding it in university where he's training in origami. He's now just filling in forms and just chucking them up everywhere, and the forms normally filled in order to make his job better. It's building.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is, how far up does this problem go? I mean, does it go up as far?
It goes up all right up to the top. All right up the top. Years ago, if you became a constable, you had done, say, 6 years as a constable, 4 years as sergeant, 8 years as an inspector. Then you get chief inspector, then superintendent, chief superintendent, then commander. Each one takes several years to get the next promotion. And then by the time you become a chief constable, you've been a police officer, done every job in the police force that's conceivable that you could do, and you've done each of those jobs for a few years. You know the job inside out, upside down, back and forwards. You know it. Now you're getting people who are chief constables, who've got university degrees, who don't know what day of the week it is when it comes to actual policing, and who are now in charge of running a police force. And all they are doing is they are pushing paper. And the major problem with the police force today is that we don't have police officers with the moral courage. Don't have a problem getting somebody to take a knife off a 6'6" drum. That is not a problem in the police force today. What is a problem in the police force is having somebody to come along and actually say, no, I am not doing that, or I'm going to continue with this inquiry, and if you get in my way, I will arrest you for obstructing me, to their senior officers.
I'm not sure that moral obligation isn't a problem just for the police force. I think it's a problem across our society at the moment. I think.
Well, I'm sure that it is, but nevertheless, it is something which you can't afford to have in a police force. Your police force must be as perfect as it can be. Your police officers must be morally to a high moral standard. They really must. And that includes having the moral courage to do what is right. Do you know what I mean? When I was
the problem is what kind of thing can you do about it? I mean, it sounds like it's come up into the...
I know. I'll tell you what you can do about it. I'll tell you what you can do about it. I was investigating a company called Services Corporation International. They are I did this off my own bat. They are a funeral company. I know a lot about burial law. And what they are doing is contravening the burial law of this country. And I thought it was time somebody put them on trial for it. So I started investigating them myself. I was called in by an inspector for what they laughingly call words of advice. Right? It actually is a word that begins with a B and ends with a K. Right? What they say, they laughingly call words of advice. And he told me all why I shouldn't do it, why I couldn't do it. And he then said to me, you will get this in a letter, which will go on your record. And I got it, and I got the letter, and then I wrote back to him, and I said to him, sir, having considered the conversation we held in your office, and having sat down and read your letter several times, I have to tell you that I believe your advice is flawed, and I am unable to accept it. And I then said to him, you will be aware that it is an offence carrying a power of arrest for any person, whoever they may be, to attempt to stop a constable in the execution of his duty to detect offences from detecting those offences. You should also be aware that I will not hesitate to make such an arrest, whoever it is attempts to prevent me carrying out my duty to detect offences. And I wrote it and I sent it back to him. And you have never seen an inspector run backwards so fast in your life. Because if I arrest him for obstructing me, his 20 or 30 years in the police force and his pension is down the tubes if he gets convicted.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what it takes. You have to have police officers with the moral courage to do what is right. No matter what, they have to do what is right. And that takes moral courage. It doesn't take physical courage, it takes moral courage. And that you don't have.
As I say, I think this problem is not just endemic in the police force. I think this the blame culture that we have and personal responsibility is completely out of the way nowadays. And
I think
at the end of the day, whether you get your paycheck or not is the end of the moral argument for a lot of people, and that is disgusting in the way that I'm just not sure how we can change the moral attitudes towards these kind of things.
Well, it starts in school, doesn't it? You know,
yeah.
if you take away all of the, like for example, you take away all the parents' responsibility for their child, because you say to parents, if your child is misbehaving at home and you clip them around the ear hole, we will bury you alive under social workers, take your children into care, and we will prosecute you. So then, when the child's doing something wrong, you say, wait, pack it in, I'm going to clip you around the ear hole. He turns around and says, yeah, you do that, I'll report you. So parents are then scared silly to discipline their own children. This is particularly obvious when you're talking about West Indian kids. In the West Indies, if the kid does something wrong, they take him and they give him a thumb, right? Over here, West Indian parents, if they give their kids a thumb, are prosecuted for it. So then the kids get out of control. And it's the same with our own kids, they get out of control. You see them all the time, don't you? There's a load of yobs walking down the bloody street. You see it all the time. They are out of control because from an early age they've never had any discipline instilled into them. They've never had to consider anybody else's feelings but their own. They play all these computer games where they are massacring people left, right and centre with samurai swords, and that desensitised them. That's why we have so much violent crime. And these kids are going out, and they're not owned, I'm not saying black kids particularly, but the kids generally are going out carrying knives, and they don't seem to worry about the fact that they just stabbed somebody to death. They don't seem to bother, it doesn't seem to bother them. It's a bit of a game. And so what we have to do is reverse that. And that starts in the classroom. Unfortunately, it starts in the classroom and at home. They need to bring back corporal punishment in the schools. They need to say to the parents, they're your kids, you look after them, you discipline them as you want them. We don't want to cover this.
I'm not sure I agree with the corporal punishment aspect. I certainly agree that the problem is with our education system. I'm not sure that it's that you can blame video games for it. I think it's more kind of, you know, if you're going to blame video games, you may as well blame the news as well. If you know that we're completely exposed to this constant barrage of information and negativity that the news puts forward. But I think it's not just one aspect that it's the problem. I think it's over.
Oh, I think it's multi-aspects. I think it's multi-aspects. But they all have to be dealt with. And when you say you don't agree with corporal punishment, I have to tell you that pain is by far and away the best educator. It works every time.
But just morally and ethically, I just don't think as a society that we're going to be moving forward if we're, you know, instilling corporal punishment as a method of well, it's just another method.
Let me give you an example. I had an old man on my beat. He'd worked on the railways. He got hit by a train. He lost a leg. He was in a wheelchair. He was 77 years of age. There was a gang of little toe rags who was giving him a really hard time. And one of the women on the estate said to me one day, what are you going to do about this old Harry? And I'll call him old Harry. What are you going to do about old Harry? And I said, well, what's the matter with old Harry? She said, you know he's crying himself to sleep every night. And I said, no, I didn't know that. Why is he crying himself to sleep? She said, well, because this gang of toe rags are giving him a hard time. They're putting dog crap through his door. They're putting bits of paper through his door and setting fire. They're bashing on his windows and his walls all night long. They're shouting abuse through his letterbox. He's a 77-year-old man in a wheelchair. It's simply wrong. I was walking around the beat one day and I saw this little gang of toe rags and they were all calling out after me, Albert, Albert, Albert. And I walked over to the leader and I just grabbed him by the ear roll and I walked him away from the rest of his dozen. There were about a dozen of them there. I walked him away from the rest of them and I said, listen, I've decided we're going to change the rules around here. And he said, what do you mean? I said, it's quite simple. The next time old Harry cries himself to sleep, I'm going to find you and I'm going to kick the living daylights out of you. He said, well, you'll get arrested then, won't you? I said, no, you missed the point. If I could prove what you were doing sufficient to put you in a court, you'd be under arrest going in now. I can't. When I'm kicking the crap out of you, I'm in fact going to be playing poker in the canteen with 20 other policemen. You'll have the same problem that I got. And I said, just so you know I'm not kidding, I gave him a good hard thump round the ear roll. Harry never cried himself to sleep anymore.
Yeah, well, I certainly resolved the situation, but I think that the issue, rather than the poor gentleman was being attacked and abused in such a way, I think if there was the community around to actually support that, if the community turned around and said to those that you're not welcome here, if there was some sort of community spirit, community unity in any of that aspect,
well, yeah,
that situation would have resolved itself.
Listen, when I was a kid, if you did something wrong, the nearest adult would walk over, if you ran the ear off, and tell you to pack in. Right? That's when I was a kid. Nowadays, everybody is scared that if they interfere, they are going to be arrested. If they're not stabbed at the time, they're going to be arrested. Right?
I mean, there isn't any justice in this country, and because there is no justice, it means people don't feel that they have the social responsibility to be able to stand up and do things.
It's not a question of social responsibility, it's a question of the fact that time after time after time, an adult in community has done the right thing when it concerns a child who's out of order. They've done actually the right thing. They've gone over, they picked them up by the scruff of the neck, hung them off a wall and said, now you behave yourself or else. And then the kids screamed for a
aspect of community, but that because there's no justice,
but you see, the kids then scream for the police, who come along and arrest the adult and get charged with assault, and he's convicted for assault. Let me tell you something. I had a policeman friend of mine was walking down a canal bank, and he saw a 14-year-old girl out of her brain on drugs that she'd given by 6 adult men, and they're not giving her the drugs and the glue to sniff for the benefit of her health, you know. So he arrested her for a place of safety to take her into the police station. They called her parents. The parents sued him for unlawful detention. He had to go to court and he was fined £100 in the magistrate's court. Where is the sense and the justice that, or of sense in those parents?
This is the problem. It's not as simple as just a Bobby on the street clipping a young lad around the ear. I mean, the system itself is broken.
The whole country is broken. The whole country is broken, and you can trace the whole thing back to parliamentary legislation. The whole thing goes back to Parliament.
Well, yeah, which is in itself a system.
Well, it is, and if you look at Parliament today, how many politicians in Parliament today have actually had a real job and worked for a living? David Cameron hasn't. David Cameron came out of university, got himself a job as a researcher with a Member of Parliament, then gets put into a safe seat. Now he's Prime Minister. He's never had a day's job in his life.
Of course he hasn't, because all of our politicians are bought and sold. Our system, the democracy that we have, is not really a democracy. It's a poor illusion towards a democracy.
I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. I agree with you 100%.
Yeah.
I agree with you 100%. And what I'm trying to do is to restore the status quo by actually hanging the buggers for the treasons that they're committing. You know, I don't know why, when John Yates at Scotland Yard investigated cash for honours, nobody got arrested. But nobody was. Although it's patently obvious that people were buying their peerages and everything else. Patently obvious they were doing that, but nobody got arrested. It happens to be a major crime. Why was nobody arrested? Out of the 310 members of Parliament that they had concrete evidence, hard evidence that they had fiddled their expenses, why were none of them arrested for fraud? Until there was a major public outcry, and then John Yates went back and arrested 5 specimen people. They all got convicted, they all went to prison, but there are another 305 people who should have been arrested. Why didn't John Yates do them? Why hasn't John Yates arrested those people? And then it turns out that John Yates himself is corrupt. Because he used air miles belonging to the Metropolitan Police, not his property, that belonged to the Metropolitan Police, to buy tickets so that his kids could go on holiday. And eventually he had to resign over it.
It's because Albert, they've all got dirt on each other. The corrupt, right? They've all got in the highest parts of Parliament, from Prime Ministers downwards, every one of them have got dirt currency on each other.
Well, yeah, but you see, John Yates' boss, who should have dealt with John Yates by arresting him and charging him with fraudulent misappropriation of Metropolitan Police property, right? He should have done that because that's the crime that he committed, which is quite a serious crime. Instead of doing that, he'd give him a slap on the wrist and told him he'd have to pay the money back. Well, okay, that's fine as far as it goes. But why didn't he have him arrested? Then we find that the Commissioner himself has to resign because he's taken a £12,000 freebie that he's not supposed to take. And the policeman in me says, how many freebies has he taken that we don't know about?
Oh, yeah. Exactly.
How many freebies has he taken that John Yates knows he's taken? And so he can't arrest John Yates because John Yates will drop him in it.
Currency. It's the currency, Albert.
Yeah.
Of course it is. And that's why we need a police force which is morally strong. And it's police force we don't have. Unfortunately, and it breaks my heart to say it, but we don't have it.
Well, it's changed a lot since the days of being a peeler, I would think, although
Well, let me tell you, right, there's also, I mean, there's a list going around on the internet, isn't there, of police officers who've been jailed and everything else. Something like 400 police officers. Now, I looked through the list, and quite a few of them were jailed for having sex with women who were vulnerable, probably because they were mentally retarded or something like that. Because if you have somebody who has a mental problem and you sleep with them, even if they ask you to, it's statutory rape, right? So these police officers have all been sent to prison for that. But in all honesty, when you put a uniform on and you go to places, you get the women throw themselves at you. You know, and if the woman is perfectly, you know, okay and perfectly sane and sensible and all the rest of it, knows exactly what day of the week it is, you know, and you're a red-blooded male, the chances are that you might just go to bed with her. You know, now morally it's not quite the done thing, is it? But it's not legally illegal. And that's the point. Unless he's doing it on duty, of course, in which case he's defrauding the police of his wages time. But I mean, basically, you know, these things happen in all walks of life, and they're not really corrupt practices as such, but they do occur, and yet people, in fact, jump on these things and to the expense of everything else, you know, and it's just ridiculous, really. It's just ridiculous. One of the best inspectors I know had an affair with a woman special constable, and then they both had to resign from the police force because the affair came out that they were having this affair. It was a bit more than just the ordinary affair, but they both had to resign. Now, he's a bloody good policeman in every other respect except for the fact that he was having a sexual relationship with a colleague. Yeah? But they both went. Now, he resigned and kept his pension, which I don't blame him for. And last I heard, he was driving a heavy goods vehicle because he had a full licence. He was a Class 1 driver for the police, and that includes HGV. But I mean, basically, a really good policeman. And yet he has to resign, and you get other policemen who come up through the university system who know absolutely nothing about nothing, who don't have to resign when they are doing infinitely worse things.
Well, yeah, it's just the corruption in the system again, isn't it? It obviously there is not. Sorry.
What it is let's get rid of the good policemen before they arrest us.
Well, yeah, I mean that. But how much of that is from down? How much of the?
Oh, I think a lot of it's
top. Police forces is coming down from the. You know, get rid of the good ones so that we can basically have a police force that we can control, that we can have as our basically internal
just do it,
internal
basically,
control system.
Yeah, corruption doesn't start at the bottom; it starts at the top every time. You know, they go down, but the guy at the top is corrupt. The guy under him thinks, well, he's corrupt, so I'm going to corrupt, and I'll get away with it, and it works its way down the ladder. You know, if the police force is generally honest and well run and efficient, then you have a system of supervision in place. So if a police constable is corrupt, it doesn't take very long before one of the other police constables finds out about it and does something about it. You know, and what I tell people is every one of these 400 police officers who've been arrested, charged and sent to prison was arrested by another policeman. You know.
As the saying goes, Albert, the fish rots from the head down.
Yeah, but corruption starts at the top. And if you have the Commissioner of Metropolitan Police, the most high-ranking policeman in the country, taking backhanders, which he shouldn't be taking, then obviously he is corrupt. And the corruption is going to go down the ladder. As I say, when I see things like that, I don't want to say, well, okay, he's resigned over that, that's fair enough, get rid of him. I want to say, hold on a minute, what else has he done that's corrupt? What can he be arrested for and actually go to prison for?
Well, I'm just intrigued because, you know, how much of Agenda 21 is actually involved in this population control? Because obviously if there is corruption coming down from Parliament, then there is some sort of
Parliament appoint your chief constables. You know, it's government that appoint the chief constable, and it should actually be the Queen, because I don't know if you know it, but once you become a chief constable, you don't have a warrant card as such. You get an ingot of gold on a chain, which you hang around your neck, which tells everybody what you are. It's actually a gold bar which you hang around your neck. I mean, I know they carry warrant cards now, like the rest of the police force, but when they become a chief constable, they're supposed to go to Buckingham Palace, and the Queen gives them this particular gold bar with a chain on it, which they wear around their necks, and that's their badge of office as a chief constable. But you know, when you actually look at these things, and you see what's going on, it is just horrendous. And when police officers want to do something that's really, really useful, there's always somebody in authority saying, no, you can't. You know, when you say, why can't I? They say, well, because. But they don't actually give you a very valid because. Then you get ordered not to do it. And then if you do go and do it, then you're on a charge because you're breaking the police discipline code because you're not obeying the order. Doesn't matter how sensible the order is or isn't. You know, it's just ridiculous, really. I have to admit, I spent most of my time in trouble with my inspectors in the police force.
Had you? I could imagine.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Albert, the one that does actually infuriate me today is the out and out I think abuse of police powers. I can't put it any other way. Under civil matters when it's none of their business.
Well, and what you're talking about bailiffs and stuff.
Yeah, it really does cheese me off, because these are not just one or two YouTube videos. It's happening over the whole country, but it is a epidemic.
No, I understand what you're saying, and I agree with you. I understand what you're saying. The police officer is only there to keep the peace.
Yes.
Keep the peace. And what the police officer's instructions are, what they were to us, were like, you're going there to keep the peace. If the bailiff breaks the door down, the minute somebody, because he's got a court order, he has a court order authorising him to do that, right?
Well, often they don't nowadays, that's the thing.
Well, yeah, well, they say they don't. I mean, it's like police officers who go into somebody's house, they say, well, he didn't have a warrant, you know. Well, in a lot of cases, a police officer doesn't have a warrant because he can do what they call a Section 18 search, and there's several things under the Police Act.
But that would be, if he was doing that under a civil matter, that would be bad policing.
Well, it depends on what you're doing, but I mean, basically, I agree with you. I agree with you. Section 18 searches and these other searches for drugs, they should be dealt with under the criminal law.
Yeah,
but what they tell the police is, right? What they tell the police is, you go there. If the bailiffs break into the house, if anybody lays a hand on the bailiff, then you go in and you arrest the person who's assaulting the bailiff.
What about the bailiff? What about the bailiff assaulting people in the house?
Well, the bailiffs, if the bailiff, the instructions are, if the bailiff assaults somebody, you arrest the bailiff.
But they never do they?
Well, I know they don't, but then that's because, you know, the whole system has gone corrupt, hasn't it? The whole system has gone.
So I think.
Well, how are we going to apply a remedy from within? How are we going to achieve that, Albert? Because, I mean, you're implying that there's so many hurdles we need to accomplish before we can even get to that stage. But that seems to be the biggest barrier stopping us from.
It is extremely difficult. It's extremely difficult for the ordinary man to overcome it, because, you know, he's fighting an uphill battle here, isn't he? Because if the bailiff pushes him out of the way, that's assault. The policeman should arrest the bailiff. If he then retaliates against the bailiff, the policeman arrests him. You know.
Well,
so
I'll be honest.
Either way, he's going to lose his house, because they're going to, you know, either way they're going to lose his house. But you're absolutely right, and you see, I feel very sorry for the police at times, because you get these things like child stealing by the state, don't you? Where you go in and you see the police go in with social services, and they're only there to keep the peace, and the social worker says, look, I've come for your baby, and mum and dad say, bugger off, you're not having it, right? And then the social workers insist that they have it, and it ends up with the social workers dragging the baby off the parents, and then the police are going to sit in and sit on the parents to stop them retaliating. You know what I mean? It is. But you can see, if you look at the policemen's faces when they're doing that, they would rather be facing a bloody armed robbery with a machine gun than be where they are. They don't want to be there. They have no desire to be there. You know, they'd rather be risking their lives on the street than taking somebody's kid off of them. You know, and it is heartbreaking. It's very hard for the police as well. And you know,
well, they are allowed to think though, Albert. You can't like excuse them for that.
Well, no, you can't. But you see, it depends on the circumstances. You see, the social workers go there. They've got a court order signed by a court, by a judge, and normally a high court judge. So they go there with a court order from a high court judge saying that the child has to be taken to a place of safety. Yeah. Now, you can do the same thing yourself. I mean, if you're a police officer and you go to a house where there's a problem, and say you know, the child is at risk, then what the police are told is you have two choices. You can take the child into protective custody, or you can remove the person that presents a risk to the child. Right? Now, if there's two parents there, one presents a risk and the other one doesn't, I would always leave the child with the one who doesn't and take the one who does. And then we get him down to the police station, or him or her, because quite often it's not man. We'll get them down to the police station, and actually they would then be bailed to go to court at a certain date, or to come back to the police station in a month's time after we've done the thing. But part of their bail condition is that they don't go back to home address, they don't contact their family, right? And the minute they do that, then there's thing. But you see, the police hate that type of job, and they hate dealing with domestic incidents. They hate it with a vengeance. You go to a house where the woman has been beaten senseless, she might have broken bones and all the rest of it. You arrest her husband. Then the woman attacks you and says, you know, leave him alone, he's my husband. If he wants to break my arm, he can break my arm. You know, it is a thankless job which the police hate. There are so many jobs they get stuck with which they absolutely hate with a vengeance. Yeah. But they don't have an option.
Well, they're there to facilitate it, right? It's like a game of chess. Once you get into stalemate, you know, if you're an impartial as possible, then
yeah,
your hands are tied behind your back, because all you're there to do is facilitate. If you can't,
all you're there to do is to prevent a breach of the peace. That's what you are there for. And the minute the father or the mother attacks a social worker, then you arrest them for a breach of the peace or a public order offence. Because police officers should never arrest anybody for a breach of the peace, because if they do that, it's a discipline offence.
In a way, Albert, I agree with a lot you're saying about the police. That, you know, the devil they do, devil they don't. Right? They're in a situation. So if you take it back to what you're saying about the child stealing by the state, it's not so much the police officer who's got to go and follow his orders. It's the corrupt magistrate courts who actually, all these hearings and that are done in star chambers. Actually, they're done in secret courts, and actually the parents themselves are not allowed to attend them.
Yeah, but I think realistically, I don't think it's so much a problem with the courts. I think it's a problem with social services and the police who work with social services, youth and community.
I think it's a problem across all sectors.
Because the police who work with social services, they have a very incestuous relationship with social services. So social services say this is what we want to do and this is what's happened. The police will, generally speaking, comply with that and go with it. And vice versa, if the police want to do something, the social services will invariably go with it. What the police should do is say to social services, well, hold on a minute, let me have a look at this from a policeman's perspective and find out whether the social services are actually legally justified in doing what they're doing. If they did that every time, you'd probably find social services wouldn't be able to take half the kids they take now. But they don't do it.
So what's the judicial system? I mean, you're a Magna Carta.
But you see, the problem is, you see, when social services and police officers dealing with this thing go to court, when paediatricians go to court, right? I'll give you a case that I know about. young girl was suspected of being abused by her older brother. She was examined by a paediatrician who couldn't find any real evidence of any penetration anywhere. You know, her hymen was intact. She had anal reflex dilation, but, you know, which is a badly discredited test anyway, and the child suffers a lot with constipation, which in fact would cause anal reflex dilation. And so the doctor said, well, she's been anally abused on a test that everybody else has discredited for the last, well, since the 1980s. Yeah.
So how would you, going on that story that you shared with us, Albert?
The kid's then arrested, right? The big brother is arrested and persuaded to admit to 5 counts of anal rape, on the understanding from social services that if he actually, because the doctor said, I can't, told the police she couldn't deal with the boy's problems unless he was in prison. And from that moment on, when you read the papers, as I read the case papers with a policeman's eye, you can see it is patently bloody obvious that the police have set out 100% to ignore any evidence which is in the boy's favour and only accept that evidence which in fact is not really good in any case to convict the boy of a crime.
Yeah.
That boy got 5 times 5 years in prison. He's now 17, he's still in prison. Now, there's no real evidence for that. But you can't actually say that all policemen are bad, because I wrote to the Chief Constable, sent him all of the case papers, sent him covering note as to what I thought was wrong with the case. He looked at it, he sent it to his complaints department, they looked at it, they appointed a detective chief inspector to look at it. That was then given to a sergeant when she got promoted to superintendent. He looked at it, he's referred it back to another chief inspector. It has now been made a full police inquiry. What the police are actually looking at is my allegations, which I wrote down for the police, to say that if I was the officer in the case, this is what I would be looking at, was a conspiracy to pervert the course of justice between the doctor and the police officers, because it's patently obvious that the doctor wanted him in prison and then the police officers bent the evidence to make sure that he went there. And because one of the children died in foster care for for manslaughter by gross neglect, and that's what the police are investigating now. That's gone through, from my letter to the Chief Constable, that's gone through several departments of the police force. It's now a full inquiry into the actions of 3 police officers in that case, which is IPCC overseen. So basically, it's not all policemen are bad, but you do get bad policemen, and they work, and they have a very incestuous relationship with social services and with the paediatricians. And the problem that the courts have is when a consultant paediatrician stands up and says, this is my view, this is what happened, and then the social worker says, yes, we agree with that 100%, our examinations, our investigation proved that as well, and then the policeman stands up and says, well, I arrested him for that, you know, and he subsequently admitted it. The court doesn't have a lot of leeway, does it?
Well, don't you?
Whereas the courts really ought to actually give everybody a really hard time and make them prove their cases.
Yeah, well, you say the court. Now, I know for a fact that most of these cases where parents lose custody of their children and they're taken into care by the state or foster agencies who get 25 grand a time, that's another story.
Yeah.
Right. Do you think they deserve a Crown Court hearing?
Well, I think that they should. In the event of an allegation of a serious sexual assault, I think there should be a trial in front of a jury. And I think if at least a proper trial in front of a juvenile court.
Yeah, what if it's not there's not a crime as in a crime somebody's done somebody physically harmed. If it's social services putting a claim to take a child from her mother because she had a marijuana joint, I mean, come on, kids have been taken off of people, especially...
Well, I was reading one the other day where social services wanted to try and take a kid off her mother because she had said that she was really tired and she wanted something to help her to sleep. And they were trying to work the kid, she didn't actually do that. But I'll tell you something else. Another couple who were social services were trying to take their child, and I said to them, have you got any letters from social services which you can prove You have to be able to prove it, which you can prove are not true. And they said, oh yes, we got quite a few. I said, in that case, take them to the police station, and this is what I'd advise anybody to do. Take the letters to the police station with the evidence that you have to prove them true, that they are not true, and ask the police to investigate the social workers who wrote the letter, or the doctors, or whoever it is who wrote the letter. Ask them to be investigated for issuing a false instrument contrary to the 1981 Forgery and Counterfeiting Act, Section 8. And because that is a criminal offence. And the parents didn't actually do that. What they did was they wrote to social services and they said, right, what we're going to do now is we're going to take your letters and the evidence that proves them to be wrong to the police and investigate you, get them to investigate you for issuing a false instrument. And social services, by return, wrote back and said, we have no interest in your children whatsoever. We don't want them. You can keep your children. We're not even interested in taking your children.
So we
a complete climb down.
Yes, we come back to corruption and money, because we know, everybody knows. Actually, a friend of mine came round and saw me. I hadn't seen for ages, and he says, I'm thinking about adopting a kid, right? He had no idea of what was going on, you know, other than what normal thing is. And I said, well, just consider these two things. I'm not saying this. And I told him about how the social services, what I've read on the internet and what I've got from good people who's done a lot of good work in this. I mean, I don't know much about it. And he said, what? They would take them to earn money. I said, well, you do realise that the adoption agencies get, fosters agencies get 25 to 30,000 pounds per child.
Yeah.
Right now, and I said, I'm just telling you this. I'm not saying, look, they're doing it for that reason. I'm just giving you the information. I said, do you know anything about that? And he said, no, I haven't got a clue. I said, and there's all the care that goes round and all the support and workers and money. The courts get paid. Everybody gets paid. But there's the poor little kid who doesn't want to go and be is not considered at all in the whole.
No. Well, no, I agree with you. I agree with you. The whole system needs a good swift kick in the fork, and it needs sorting out. But there are ways you can do it, and probably one of the most efficient ways of doing it is to use the 1981 Forgery and Counterfeiting Act, because when these people write you letters and they tell you things about your child, you know that they're doing, you know for a fact that your child has been regularly seen by your GP, and your GP has not raised any concerns about your child because your child has had the normal childhood illnesses. Other than that, is perfectly healthy, perfectly clean, well fed, looked after. Right? Your GP is going to say that. So because that's the fact, right? Social services, then they write these reports as to why they want to take your kids away and all the rest of it, and they soup them up. I'm sure they soup them up. But by souping them up, they are committing an offence under the 1981 Forgery and Counterfeiting Act. And you can go to prison for that. And I think that what we need to do is we need to get a few social workers prosecuted, convicted, and sent to prison for issuing a false instrument. And that way, every other social worker in the country has had a shot fired across their bows. They are not going to go out and issue any more false instruments, are they? That means they're not going to be able to take so many kids into care. But the whole thing is that they've got this quota system, haven't they? Which is actually it is designed. It is absolutely designed by Tony Blair to actually take kids into care, because they're saying to social services, you have a quota. You have to put up, say, 150 kids in your area every year for adoption. If you don't that quota, if you only put up 100, then you will lose money. If you lose money, that means the social services department can't afford to employ so many social workers. That means the social workers have now got a vested interest in taking kids into care, because if they lose their job, they can't feed their kids, they can't pay their mortgage. So they're going to take your kids in order that they can keep after looking after their kids and pay their mortgage. They're not interested in you anymore as a family or even as an individual. They're not interested in you. They're only interested in keeping their job. and it is this quota system. When you start setting quotas for things like points for policemen, quotas for adoption, you end up with a very corrupt system.
Yeah. So it goes back to once you've got your paperwork and you've gone to the police station, and you've said, you know, you've put forth what you've gone for, and if their quota system's not in place, then hopefully there should be no corruption. You should get your thing dealt with, acknowledged. You should get a crime number, and then hopefully no social services is going to get to court and be knocking on your door to take them kids away.
Well, no, they can't. You see, if you're prosecuted, the police are prosecuting the social worker for issuing a false instrument, right? Which is what they should be doing. If the police are doing that, if the police are investigating other police officers in the Youth and Community Department for issuing a false instrument, which they should be doing, then in fact it means that policemen and social workers are going to end up in prison. And the minute they start ending up in prison, that fires a shot across the bow of every other social worker and every other policeman in the country. And they are not going to want to go to prison.
They're not going to do that. If they were going to do that, they would have done it already.
Well, no. You see, the point is, the police, unlike me, if I heard of something, I'd start looking at it, even if it wasn't brought to my attention, properly. Start looking at it, because I felt I had a job to do, and that was to detect crime. But basically, most policemen today, if they're not actually being told, well, this is a crime, they won't bother about it. You know, why go out and do work you don't have to do? Why make yourself, all this extra paperwork if you don't have to do it? So they're not going to go out and look for it. You have to go to the police station and say, look, I've had these letters from your Youth and Community Department, and this is the proof. I've got evidence from my GP and the local hospital consultant who looked after my kid when he had his broken leg or whatever. I've got all this evidence from these people, responsible medical personnel. Here are their things from all their clinics where they've been through all their checkups. They're all meeting their percentiles. They're all properly dressed, properly fed. The doctors who deal with the kids on a regular basis got no concerns at all. And yet I've got here a report from your policeman saying that the child is actually,
that's all good, Albert. But it's like
they've got to investigate it.
It's like climbing a wooden ladder, not knowing which step's broken. And I think we've just been joined by Dave Witcher. So yeah, hello Dave.
Yeah. Hello there, David. I'm going to vanish just for 30 seconds.
All right, no worries.
How are we doing?
Doing all right. You've got a good echo, we are.
Yeah, no, I'm in the extension. I've just been chatting with Andy from the radio station.
All right, cool.
Because there's a call going out on that Freedom Radio thing tomorrow night.
Oh, are you involved with that tomorrow then, are you?
Yeah, I've just been speaking about it for about an hour and a quarter, and I've come off, and I see this call was going on, so I thought I'm going to join in.
Nice one. I did send you a message earlier on.
You what?
I sent you a message earlier on just to let you know.
Yeah, man. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Who's in there tomorrow night?
In where's that, Dave?
This radio chat thing.
On Freedom?
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Alright, I'll wait and see what happens.
Yeah.
You never know, you've got to keep your options open.
That's it. We were talking about trying to deal with the corruption within the state, and I were hoping to bring David Robinson to join us to talk about lawful dissent, trying to get Albert's views on that and a few other things, but we had a little problem with it earlier, so he weren't able to join us.
There isn't my investigation so far, lads, and I've met Albert a few times. Albert knows me. I've just big on respect, sort of the common law, and living in a fair and just environment. And Albert wrote to Master Leslie some time ago a great letter, and Albert said, have you got a tank division, because you're a department, Queen's Bench Division? He said, have you got a load of tanks behind you? I was laughing my head off. But I put in Master Leslie's hands the book The Royal Law, and I opened it up onto the pages where it was the Queen's coronation oath. He looked it up and down for about a minute, he swung back on his chair, he gave it back to me, and he said, with respect, these documents make little or no sense. And mate, I'm telling you, it took my breath away. So, on that proviso alone, I know we are living in a lawless society.
Yeah.
Period.
Well, Master Leslie causes me some concerns because I wrote to him because he's saying there's no such thing as a Queen's Bench Court, but there is a Queen's Bench Division.
That's right.
You know, and I said to them, well, that's like saying that there's an armour division with no tanks.
That's right. Albert, all they've got is denial. All they can do is hide it from you and say it doesn't exist.
Yes, I know that's what they say, and they're talking crap. If you have a Queen's Bench Division, then all of those courts in that division are Queen's Bench courts. And as I pointed out to Master Leslie, it's like saying that you've got an armour division but no tanks. You know, if there aren't any tanks, there isn't an armour division. So if there are no Queen's Bench courts, there is no Queen's Bench Division. It really is that simple. But what they do is they don't call it the Queen's Bench Division Court, they call it a superior court. Now, I don't know why they do that, but they do. They call it a superior court.
Albert.
But all of those judges are judges of the Queen's Bench.
System. You change the definition of a certain thing, and then you rename it to something else, and that's how you get round certain aspects of the law.
If you look up a list of judges, if you Google a list of judges, right, you'll find there's about 120, 150 High Court judges, or they were when I sent every one of them my book. And if you Google them, you'll find out that it says family division, and it will give you the names of all the judges in that family division. Then it will say Queen's Bench Division, and it'll give you a number of all the judges in the Queen's Bench Division. Now, you know, if you are in a family division list, you sit in a family division court. There's no argument about that. No. If you're in the Chancery list, you sit in a Chancery court. There's no argument about that. So why, if you're sitting in a Queen's Bench Division, why is there an argument that you're sitting in another court other than the Queen's Bench Court? It is just ridiculous.
Albert,
it's just ridiculous. Even their own logic can't deny that one.
Albert, why don't you come up with us? We'll go up Queen's Bench in the new year when the weather warms up, and you can come and put all this to Master Leslie. We'll back you up.
Listen, Master Leslie, I wrote to Master Leslie over this very issue. Right?
I know you did. It's in the letter you sent me.
And the reply I got back was that if I wanted to dispute it, then I should take it up in his court. You know, he's not prepared to discuss it outside of his court.
Well, we'll go up there then. We'll go up there.
So if you go into his court, it's going to be his rules and everything else, isn't it? So, you know, he's just going to do whatever he likes.
Albert, do you remember a while back when you told us about that Police Reform Act and you went through Director General?
Yeah.
Well, me and Andy's looked in past few days, and we've noticed we might be wrong. We'd like you to check and, you know, put us right if we're not right. You know, what it is we've seen it, and it seems to have been replaced with the Director General of Soccer. Now you check this up. I might be wrong, but as much as what me and Andy's done it past, can you confirm this, Andy?
Well, yeah, that's right.
Because let's change the subject. You know, when you are a council tenant, and you get behind with your rent or your rates or anything else, the council will then send for you to go in to be interviewed under caution. Or say you've been sick, so you've had a sick claim in, and then your money gets stopped, and you're a bit restless, you're a bit slow, you're too ill, you know, you don't know your way around what you're supposed to do. So actually, what happens is that you're getting paid your sick pay or your disability pay, whatever it is, for a month more than you should have. Then the council call you in to be interviewed under caution, right? And that's under the Police Reform Act as well. Because the Police Reform Act allows the council to actually grant various officers full police powers.
So how can they do that using a Director General of Soccer when soccer's no longer soccer, it's merged with the other one now, aren't it?
Yeah, but they don't do it with the Director General of Soccer. What they do, what the law actually says, what it actually says in the Police Reform Act is that a Director General of a council can appoint officers to have full police powers for certain purposes within the council, right?
Okay.
Now, can you name me a single council in this country that has a Director General?
They haven't got one, have they?
Well, they've just appointed one. They've changed it round. It's
What do you mean
Take it down to soccer.
that complete act, that police act is completely different, Albert. They've changed it in past few days.
Have they?
Yeah, it's been updated. That's what I'm trying to tell you about, and I didn't know if you were
I'll
aware
have
of
to
it.
have a look at the new one.
Yeah, please
But
do,
you
Albert. Yeah.
You see, your local council, it's got a chief executive, it has directors and partners, it doesn't have a director general. And therefore nobody in that council can have power. Not up to the council to decide if they're going to give the authority to do that, or Parliament laid it down to be a director general. You know?
Just remember, guys, socialism is the direct opposite of freedom.
Sorry, I didn't hear a word of that.
I said, just remember that socialism is the direct opposite of freedom.
That's a complete and utter piece of misinformation. That is a complete misunderstanding of what socialism is.
It's sharing, is it not?
The word socialism doesn't mean half of the things that people think it means. Socialism means working together in an equal community.
I think people working together with socialism is probably not a bad thing, but the Law Society don't have. I mean, you won't find any love, compassion, or respect with any of it, will you?
Sorry, mate, I didn't catch what you said there. It's a bit.
I said you won't find any love, compassion, or respect in anything that the Law Society do.
Well, no, I'll agree with you there.
You know, so, I mean, the people have got it, we've got it amongst ourselves in abundance. But whenever you get involved in any of these organisations or the court systems and that, these people are emotionless, they've got no emotion. And that disturbs me.
Yeah, well, no, you see, that's part and parcel of the job. I mean, I, as a police officer, I'm not allowed to show emotion. I go there and I am dealing with, as I have done, a murder where a woman's got really serious injuries where all their insides have got ripped out of her. And I can't go there and bawl my eyes out, no matter how much I want to, at the injuries, the fact that she's dead and all the rest of it. I've got to try and keep her alive until a doctor can take over from me. And I'm not allowed to show any emotion. So I go there and I say to the girl, it's okay, fine, darling, I'm a police officer, because actually what happened, I'm a police officer, you're going to be fine, got the hospital, the ambulance is on its way, you're going to be fine, don't worry about a thing. In the meantime, we're trying to inflate her lungs. Eventually, we got to the hospital, couldn't inflate her lungs because the railings that she'd been thrown onto from the 4th floor had ripped out the bottoms of both her lungs. And it didn't matter how much air you put in through her mouth, it was coming straight out the bottom of her lungs. She couldn't inflate her lungs at all. So, you know, but you're not allowed, you can't actually show emotion. Now, I'm very lucky in that I have a brain that compartmentalises, and I can put the bad things in a box and shut the door and lock it and go away, and they don't bother me. A lot of police officers can't do that. So they turn to drink, they turn to drugs, they beat their wives. It's quite common for policemen to beat their wives and drink too much, you know, because they can't handle the emotional stress of the job they're doing. Which in fact to me means that they're in the wrong bloody job. But nevertheless, I feel I was very lucky and I got that kind of brain.
Maybe they're not in the wrong. Maybe they're not in the wrong job. They're just doing the wrong things within the job.
Well, you don't get a choice when you're a policeman. You know, you really don't get a choice. You get sent to do a road traffic accident. When you get there, you find that there's a bus that's gone over a 5-year-old kid's head, and his head is flattened like jam all over the road. You know, you have to be professional in what you're doing. Yeah. Inside, you want to scream, get me out here. You know, I don't want to deal with this, I can't deal with this, it's too much. But you can't do that, because you're a police officer and you have to deal with it. And so you deal with it, you stay professional, you deal with it. But it's afterwards, when you go home and you go to bed at night, and you can see that kid's head all over the floor, and you start having nightmares about it. You see, police officers suffer, when they go out and they beat their wives, they drink too much, take drugs. I think that is, you know, whilst they shouldn't do that, I understand why they do it, because it's a form of post-traumatic stress disease. That's what it is. They're not like soldiers being shot at who get PTSD, but they are suffering the same sorts of things. They are suffering things which are too painful for their emotional state to deal with. And they have to contain that while they're dealing with it. But you can't go on containing those things while you're dealing with them, and not have an effect on you.
Well, if we don't get back to a system that has compassion, there's no point in changing the current status quo.
Well, I know, but you see, the point is that, as far as I'm concerned, it is in fact an industrial illness, really. It's an industrial injury for police officers. It's one that I didn't suffer with, because I've got the sort of brain that compartmentalises things. And as I say, I deal with something really nasty. I don't like dealing with it. I hate dealing with it. I hate with a vengeance dealing with dead bodies, but I had to deal with them. And all mine were murders, I have to say. So, and some of them quite horrific. But you deal with it and you remain professional while you're dealing with it. Now, unlike a lot of people, once I've left it and I've gone home, it's put in a box in my head, and I close the door and I lock it, and it stays in a box in my head. I don't have the nightmares, I don't have the flashbacks, I don't have any of that. But then I don't drink, and I don't batter my wife either, and I don't take drugs, you know. But I mean, I sympathise fully with the police officers who do those things, because it is a form of post-traumatic stress syndrome. You know, and when a policeman does those things and gets caught out, and everybody goes, oh, you know, the bloody copper, he should know better than that. They really don't know what they're talking about. They really, really don't. You wouldn't say that about a soldier who's suffering post-traumatic stress disease, but in fact, you say it about a policeman. Or, you know, if you take fireman's shot, how many firemen deposit burnt the frazzle? It's not pretty. I've done it. It is not pretty. You know, and yet they do it all the time.
Well, yeah. I just know if there's no love and compassion in the people that are sort of administering and no discretionary powers, it's just, I know that the people won't ever respect, or nothing will change. Nothing will change, I don't think. I don't know. Who knows what you're told? I don't know. You know,
I understand that. I mean, there is compassion out there in the police force, you know. I mean, when I was policing and it was cold, it was wet out and it was snowing out, and you got down and outs living on the street, I would go and arrest them for being drunk and incapable, because that way they're not going to get charged with anything, but they do get put into a nice warm bloody cell for 4 hours, and they do get a cup of tea and a sandwich. Do you know what I mean? So
let's have him back out on the beat now.
Well, yeah, I'd like to be back out on the beat. Unfortunately, I'm too old for it now.
We can look that.
Well, I'm 70 now.
You don't look it.
Well, I know, but I am. I don't feel it. I still feel 25 and see the good-looking girls and think, oh God, I could use a bit of her time.
Who else is in this chat room there?
We've got Andy, myself, Iain Taylor, who I think is just ready to leave us.
Yeah, I am. Sorry, guys. I'm just writing up a quick thing to leave you guys on, but I do have to get going, I'm afraid.
Alright. Just have a little boys chat and just listen, because I'm painting at the moment.
I actually have to leave as well, because I'm going out to see The Hobbit. My son's treating me to the cinema.
Alright.
Yes, I know.
Are you going to be comfy sat down, dear, Albert? Are you out front row?
I've no idea where I am.
You're not going to have much leg room, are you?
He's booked the tickets, so yeah. Wherever I am, I shall enjoy the film. I love those films.
I thought you'd have been, Albert, I thought you'd have been enjoying an altercation with Master Leslie. I'd like to have seen you chat with him.
Well, I would, and maybe we'll organise something.
Yeah, I mean, he knows me. I've seen him a couple of times. He smiles at me now.
Does he?
Anyway, cheers for chat, guys. I've got to get going, so bye.
Alright, Iain, take care.
Mate.
You'll smell the treason when you walk in the building.
Well, yeah. But
have a good night, Albert.
I will. Okay then. Yeah. Bye.
Alright.
All right. Bye.
Alright.
Who's anyone met Albie?
Not in the snow, but spoke to him a few times.
He's rock solid here. He's part of the rock solid crew.
Yeah, well, he's what a police constable used to be when I was a kid. But
Exactly.
yeah, but saying that, when he says about compartmentalising, that's part of the problem.
Okay. Yeah, it's different. I mean, every environment changes, time changes, people change. Lord knows, I'm in the heating industry. If I look back at what I was being taught in the 80s, it's certainly not what I'm doing now. So everything changes with time, and it's good that things change with time if they're changing for the better. But we absolutely live in a different system of policing now than we did when Albert was on the beat.
Well, yeah, it's called thought police.
Yeah, of course, we had thought crimes, yeah, true enough. Oh, good old George Orwell, I bet he's turning in his grave.
He wrote Animal Farm just up the road from me, He did, honestly, he was there writing it, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, but, yeah, it's, getting back to, we're going to meant to be talking about Agenda 21 tonight, but sort of got, some of the points we chatted to, I don't know how long you was with us for, Dave, but some of the points did touch on Agenda 21, like,
Let me just cover what Ian's left this week. He's put, guys, I'm going to have to go. Thanks for the chat, very interesting. He agrees corruption comes from the top, and whilst talking about the nitty-gritty and individual problems, it's useful. I think we need to be focusing on a top-down attitude towards solving the problem. Lack of compassion and empathy is endemic in the system and in our society and culture. The question is, how do you instill that back into our culture? As we were going to be joined with David Robinson, who also didn't make it because his response was, I'm actually just tired of all the doublethink and having to explain the very simple remedy over and over again. If you do a talk on finding a remedy to the destruction of the common law and the occupation of the EU, then let me know. So there's a lack of spirit now, even within the people that are awake.
Yeah, that's that.
It's the end of the year.
Do you think it'll kickstart? We need you to go and see Mr. Leslie then to kickstart us off, Dave.
I always try and vibrate on a nice frequency and keep it all light-hearted, because when it gets deep and lean forward a little bit spiteful, it does serve a purpose, really.
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
And we're all entitled to our opinions. My truth's not your truth. But it doesn't mean to say that my truth's right or your truth's wrong. You just got to respect each other, and that's half the battle.
Yeah.
I know Albert, I've met Albert a few times.
It's a collective battle though, Dave, yeah?
You what, mate?
It's a collective battle. We've still got to remember that even though we might not always agree with one another, it's something that we've got to do together, no matter what.
Yeah, I always look at like the big politicians over the years, the big powerful ones, the ones that done good. They were never interested in what people thought about it, and they just got on and done their job. And I think if you can get in touch with yourself and know what you're doing in your heart is right, then it doesn't matter what anyone says or anyone does. It's not relevant. You just got to stay true to yourself,
Yeah.
I do. I don't care what people think about me or what they say about me. I really don't. I say good luck to them. I laugh at it.
That's it. There's only so much you can listen to before you get the gist of the message.
I don't give a no. I lost that years ago where I wonder what they think. Oh, I better do this. Maybe I'll bollocks to it. I am what I am, and that's it.
The main thing I wanted to focus on, because I were constantly aware of all this going off. You've got a certain person dealing with such a thing, but there were very little of a collection, of anything uniting these people together. And that's the end result, really. That's what we need to really do.
If you've got empathy, I tell you, what needs, this is just my opinion by the way, what needs to happen to bring back the goodness and the respect is we need to check upon the banks and change the money system and bring them to account. Once the banks and the bankers and that side of things is sorted out,
Yeah.
I think everything will fall back in line.
Well, they're all saying, nationalise all banks again, but that's no good, because where would we be? Who's going to be in charge of it then? We've got government being in charge of it, and that's not any better, is it?
No, of course not.
So we need to.
You know what? We can sit here all night chatting about this and that. I don't think anyone got a perfect solution. But when we come together,
I think we've come across it.
common ground and we work for a common good. That's when we.
Yeah, sorry, Dave. Just got a little bit of connection issue with you. I'm only getting parts of what you're saying, Dave.
I was disconnected, isn't it?
Yeah, I think we've lost him. Yeah, he's gone. But I think that's what I was saying, Andy. Is I think we've already come across that, and we've just gone straight past it.
Oh, I know.
So we've not. Nobody's actually holding on to what it is we're talking about now. With its empathy and compassion. We've always had it. We've still got it, but we've never collectively held on to it. We've never stood as ground and fought battles. Well, we have, but I can't say we haven't because, well, I can only speak for lifetime I've lived, but as stories I've heard before, like Battle of Orgreaves and all them, many people have been and stood ground and holding on to this compassion and empathy, but it's just not been enough.
Well, you've got to go to the past, unfortunately, because that's what history is. And if it's your own part of history that you've lived yourself, at least you can say it's pretty true because I was there.
Yeah.
And if you look at all of the struggles from the miners,
but I think that's what Ian's sick of hearing, David's sick of hearing it. Yeah, fair enough. We can all speak all night. Dave's just mentioned it. Do you know what I mean? That's 3 people in one conversation that we've had in a couple of hours we've been on, and we've all come down to that same way of thought. And that's not healthy.
No, it's not, because nobody's. But the thing is, if I was to stand up and say, look, let's all get together and promote a direct democracy movement, like under the 5-star movement they've done in Italy with Beppe Grillo, and the whole object of the exercise, the agenda, is to get rid of all political parties. You get rid of Parliament totally, and stick it in a museum where it bloody well belongs, and use it as an example on how not to run a democracy or try to run a democracy. Then you can start with that, and then you can say, well, we're just we have the technology today. It might be corruptible, but we've got to make sure it's not. And everybody votes for policies, right, that everybody wants to vote for, and not some bloody, top, I don't know, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs CEO bloody rule or legislation they want brought in so it benefits only them. So you get rid of the present complete establishment up from the top, from the rock part of the head all the way down, and you put something forward that's tangible, like a direct democracy, where you have no politicians, no representatives. You just have ministerial people that throw out the people's orders. And I mean the people's orders, not suggestions, what people put together and put to them, and they have no absolute authority of anything other than carrying out what the orders are. And that's the public, and that can all be done through IT because we have the technology to do that. So if I put that out there, somebody will probably say, yeah, well, the trouble is that is this will go wrong, that will go wrong, and how are you going to get people? They ain't bothered, they just want to go to the pub and get pissed and then go to their job the next morning. Well, that's not a very, very good way to put an argument across, because if that's what people worried about, it's taking up 5 or 10 minutes of their time once a week or something like that, then they deserve everything they fucking well get. Excuse my language, PJ, but there you go. I don't know if you got all that, did you?
Yeah, I got it, yeah.
You know,
That's
so you can
that's
start-
basically the way it's going.
Well, listen, if society wants, if you want a leaderless society, and call it an anarchy or you know, call it anarchy.
We are being an hypocrite. You can't shout out about all this corruption with the same breath of, you know, you're never doing anything about it in the first place.
No, absolutely. So if you do put ideas forward, I mean, you know, Iain, who's come on, he's said some good things with Albert.
Hey, he's only one of Harvard who's tackled Albert.
Yeah, well, I mean,
You can
I
talk
think
on him.
halfway. In other words, Albert, you know, you know, you're saying the court system is not corrupt, and when they operate from star chambers, you know, and secret courts where there's no jury, I think if a woman's going to lose her child, in many cases that means it's equivalent to losing her life, and you can't even be bothered to put it in a Crown Court hearing. It's disgusting.
Yeah.
Totally disgusting. And by the way, Albert, if you're a constitutional man, Magna Carta, you know, Article 61, actually, even in the 1297 revived legislative one, part of a statute, it's still actually has got that part of Article 61 in it, where you have the entitlement to be judged amongst 12 of your peers. So, you know.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad I put towards Albert that way, you know, Police Reform Act. I want him to look up that Police Reform Act and...
Well, I was with you. I'm with you on that because I don't know what's going on. It's definitely been changed.
Oh.
If there's nobody who don't know, just say no. Right, a phone call.
No consent.
No consent, bollocks to you. Piss off.
You could press
No.
You could press the red button right now.
Yeah, hello, goodbye. Hello, goodbye. Wankers. Where did they get your number from? See? This is what they do. Well, somebody's earned off of selling your information, haven't they? I know. They'll give us some compensation on a car crash, apparently, when we ain't even got a car, PJ. Well,
Just answer the phone and just say, this call currently costs £3 a minute.
Now, if you want solutions, there's several Facebooks, unfortunately, we're getting off, but grab them before we do, that are putting these direct democracy things forward.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to grab a couple of those guys...
Well, for any of them not to move to scene is foolish.
Well, I don't know, I'm sure they will do, maybe they have done already, I don't know, I've not checked, but if people want solutions, hey, listen, I can give you 1,000,000 solutions, no problem at all. Ain't a problem. But what the people would say, that's not really a solution.
It's putting them in practice though, isn't it, Andy? But we haven't even got a foundation to do that on. We've got notes to work with. We've got fragments. That's no good. We need a defrag. Somebody to come round and defrag us all. Put us, you know, put us all in line. Get rid of all crap. We need a complete defrag on the democracy. That's what we need.
It's called representative democracy.
Yeah, but before you could do any of that, it needs to be defragged.
In actual fact, it's not representative democracy because the system is a constitutional monarchy with a parliament. Albert knows that.
Well,
you know this business about the Queen not knowing her own powers, that she's head sovereign.
well, she don't know, because if she's got dementia, she doesn't know.
Not now, but she
It makes no difference what she knew. She knows nothing now. So the Queen is a long, long road. If you want to take that route.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't go down that. I wouldn't go. I mean, if anybody, I mean, you know, Albert's a very learned bloke. He knows his onions because he was a police constable. He's bound to know his onions, and
oh yeah, I see where he's coming from, you know, but we can't
he's
stick.
going to get anywhere with the Denison argument because a lot of people, public, will say that's racist.
Yep, Iain said it. Iain said it to me in the Facebook. But, and I agree, it does come across as racist, do you know what I mean, in the day we're living in now, but at his time it were probably fit for purpose. I don't think it is anymore. But that's not to say that the whole article in that Magna Carta is to be ripped out, because It all goes back down to words, doesn't it, Andy? And the psyche of today, and how we use these words, and you know.
Well, PJ, look, listen.
Which has been a lot to do with music. Music's had a lot to do with that.
You just said something quite important. And you said solutions are okay, but if they're not acted on, they're rubbish. They're not.
Yeah, but we can't. Who's going to act?
Well, I've acted on one.
Yeah, that's all right for yourself. That's not a problem. That's a step.
That's
That's a step we should all be doing anyway. We're not even all doing that.
Well, I said to everybody, they go, that's a stupid suggestion. I said, it's not so stupid because everything would come to a grinding halt. And I said, what's that? I said, get rid of your car. Get rid of your car. There it is. Finished.
Well, I don't think that's actually an odd decision. Many people would do that. Even me, I know my dad. If I told him a few things and he goes, all right, well, what do you reckon we could do about it? And I goes, well, get rid of your car.
Yeah.
It won't take him too long to have a think about that, and I bet you're out. I'd see him get rid of his car.
He would?
Yeah, he'd get rid of it.
Well, there you go.
He only has a car, so he can do shopping, you know, take my mum around if dogs need going to vets and, you know, things like this. But if it were up to him, he'd have a one-bedroom flat, he'd have no car, he'd have his bike, and that'd be it.
Has everybody done it nationally?
And that's coming from a guy who, you know, who's in civil service, who works for Home Office, but... And that's not even an average person on the street.
Well...
But them average people on the street don't have cars, so...
People have said, I've come in tonight, which is good actually. It's been a really good talk because there's been a lot of things said which mean a lot.
Well, I respect David. I respect David for his decision. You know, I mean, he's not here for me to tell him, but I'm a bit disappointed in that we didn't get to have him on to talk to Albert, because Albert were willing to listen to Agenda 21. He were willing to listen to, you know, David's argument, and David just turned it all down. When I feel he should have used that. He should have seized that moment and jumped on and, you know, voiced his opinions, which is what we're all entitled to do while we can do it.
Right, although it's been corrupted to a certain point, but the people still have the power, and if they turn out in the streets, the government is fucked as Switzerland. They have direct democracy in a form. Now, if people get really, really pissed off, by the way, they open carry in Switzerland, everybody's got a right to have a gun.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They open carry. They'll go shopping with their guns strapped on their side if they so too wish. Alright? That's what I would have put to Albert, but, you know, Albert probably wouldn't agree with it. They have a direct democracy system with cantons, but they're areas. Now, if the people ever get to the point where the powers are so tyrannical that every people in the street suffering, they can grab it back in an instant and do away with all the politicians. Because they have the system. And it's the only country in the world that's got it. It may be corrupted, because everything's corrupted when it comes to the old printing of the old numbers by the central banks. Everything's corruption. But if people in the street start starving, or they can't afford to pay for food like they're having, a lot of people in this country are facing at the moment, and will face even more in the coming year, they've got the power to do something about it. Every citizen's got a gun. They have to have a gun. It's against the law not to have one in Switzerland. How about that, PJ? You don't believe me? Go and check it out.
No, I believe you. It's just, you know, the psyche of that is just complete on opposite scale, isn't it?
They've got the lowest murder rate in Europe. So people's arguing about, oh yeah, people be shooting.
I don't particularly feel, unless you're living in an area where you're under threat from many things, not just humans, animals and stuff like Bok. You know, if you went a bit further north, you might need a gun, which is fine. Do you know what I mean? But if you've got the empathy and compassion there, then what's the problem with having a gun?
They don't use them.
They don't need to use them, no.
No,
they don't need to be used.
It's there as their right, that if they ever need a gun, they've got one. But the gun is not the point, it's the deterrent, and it also gives the citizen the power as an individual.
Alright, let's swap it round for UK, right? If they said, if we woke up in the morning and we put Parliament on, they said, right, by law, everyone has to walk around with a 6-inch blade. If we stop you, and you haven't got one on you, you're getting nicked.
Yeah, I'd go with that.
Now,
I would with that.
what do you think that? Where do you think that'd go from? What do you think that'd turn into? How would that affect things?
But people's fear straight away would naturally be, there'll be people stabbing everybody everywhere. That's bullshit, because if you want to get a carving knife out of your drawer and go and stab somebody, you can do it any day of the week.
Yeah, but you can't have carving knives. You just have a 6-inch blade.
Well, what I'm saying is, the idea of me mentioning the guns, as you know, is to drive home the point that the power that still, even today, even the corruption and whatever that's floating around in Switzerland, it won't be any different than anybody else. The people have the power. They still have the power. Okay?
If you don't need power with weapons and tools, it's all in using your brain.
I know that, but
That's the most dangerous weapon, is the brain.
Yeah, but you see, if you're using your brain and I'm using my brain, right, and the government has got no brain but only one rule, and that's to point a gun at your head and say, gimme, gimme, gimme. It doesn't matter how much we use our brain, they're just going to go, gimme, 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 gimme. Aren't they? You ain't going to stop gimme, 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 gimme. That's not going to be stopped, is it? Even if we had the acumen or the IQ of Einstein himself, he'd still get gimme, 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 wouldn't he?
Yeah.
So you can't, it's not us. We can change, but by us changing, it's got to be to the detriment of the gimme, gimme, gimmes to go away. And you can only do that by withdrawing from the system in a peaceful way and saying, I don't want your car, I don't want your job, I don't want your corruption, I don't want your actual money. If that's what it is, if it's up to you, keep it. I don't want it.
Well, I never even got to play that little audio clip to Albert or anybody, did I?
No. Eh? Of course it's a payoff. Yeah, but the stupid thing is, they're not getting anything. They're not getting anything. It's called debt economy. They're not actually receiving anything. So, yeah, solutions, yeah, practicalities, yeah, no problem. I'll think of 1 million if you want. I ain't got a problem with that. But apathy will kill everything, where people say, look guys, we can talk like this all night and we won't come up with a solution. Because we've done it, I've done it many times in the past. Okay, then what do you want to talk about? Liverpool versus Arsenal? Let's talk about going back to sleep, because that's what's going to happen.
Well, I said to David, I goes, at the end of the day, you know, he goes, let him know when I come up with a solution, a remedy. And I thought, well, you know, it's a group effort. This does affect you as well.
It's just, I'll tell you what, group effort, he wants a solution. Cessation, or cessation as it's pronounced. There you go. There, that's one word. There's the answer. I mean, everybody knows it anyway. It's nothing brilliant. I mean, everybody knows that if you go into a shop and the shopkeeper says, wants to sell you something for whatever, and you go, well, no, I don't really want that for that money. I'll give you a fiver for it. And he goes, no, I want a tenner. No, I'll give you a fiver for it. No, stalemate. And you go, well, I'll walk out the shop. I don't want it then, mate. That's it. That's all it is.
Yep.
Walk away. Just walk away. As in the Mad Max film. Mad Max 2.
You can walk on by.
Yeah, just walk away.
Don't enter the gates. Walk on by.
Just walk away. The big bloke with the mask on. I can't remember what it was now.
Yeah, I know you're on about, yeah.
Just walk away.
I'll have to find that on YouTube just to play it, just that little bit.
And yeah, I'll do the screenshot and I'll say, any all you guys out there, here's the solution. And put the clip on. Just walk away.
Do it, Andy.
Just walk away.